Hey, folks, welcome to this week's episode of What's Bruin. I am joined, as always, by my esteemed co host, the one and only Dom Bomb Dropper himself, Dominic Tiano. Dom, how are you? It feels like it's been ages, but I just saw you Tuesday night for our prospect Dom.Hockey show. How are you?
That was Sunday night, Chris. Today's Tuesday night.
Did I say yesterday? I meant Sunday. It's been a
Yeah,
long day.
you've obviously been awake too long moving this past weekend. But I'm doing great. How about you? Before I ask how you're doing, I know a couple of shows ago we had some complaints about my phone going off in the background. Well, I can't turn it off tonight, and we'll get into reasons why in a little bit. So, but how are you, Chris?
I'm tired, exhausted, but reinvigorated because we have a training camp roster to go over and dissect a little bit. And
Yeah.
we already got some folks jumping in the comments. Matrix is already as anxious as we were to get the party started. We got 3 dragons on YouTube watching us as well, hoping for some news about Swayman. There's been some percolating issues on Twitter and stuff like that we'll dive into. And Matrix again saying good evening. So Matrix, thanks for joining. Thanks everyone who's jumping in. We want these comments. We want you guys to fill our comment section and run the show. But as I mentioned, we do have a couple things on the agenda. Dom, where do you want to start? The more
Well,
recent chatter about Jeremy Swayman or the training camp roster?
why don't you put up the training camp roster and we'll segue from there.
Alrighty.
So, without going through all the names, if you look right at the bottom, you'll see one name that's obviously missing, and that is Jeremy Swayman. So, before we get into the Swayman chatter, uh, we've got to do a bit of a timeline here. Okay, so we all know about the tragedy with Johnny Goodrow. Lewis Gross, who is the agent for Jeremy Swayman and was um, Johnny Goodrow's agent, obviously had some trying times to go through with that tragedy. Uh, he's responsible for looking at his finances, making sure that his will is executed properly, negotiating with the Columbus Blue Jackets and the National Hockey League on what happens with the remainder of his contract, the funeral to attend, um, all that stuff. Um, it's been a trying time for him, and those things aren't just a day or two long. You know, it takes some time.
Yeah, and real quick, what I want to add to that, if you don't mind, there was a different podcast that made a comment about how Swayman and his agent hadn't been returning phone calls for the Bruins for a couple weeks. And when you factor in everything that you just mentioned, that's where I would tell them, no shit, shut the fuck up.
Right.
Just
I don't want to talk about what other people are talking about.
I
It
just
just,
want to put it out
yeah,
there though, because you want to talk about you want to try and say like, oh, they're ignoring him, and they're not having conversations. Yeah, no, the Bruins probably said to him, take your time, we're not going anywhere, we all want this to get done, handle what you need to handle. And to put that kind of spin on what Lewis Gross was going through is honestly just disgusting in my opinion.
again,
So
if you want the facts, you watch this show.
exactly.
Okay? It's as simple as that. I don't want to get into what other people are saying because I don't believe 90% of what other people are saying.
That
Okay?
was the only thing I wanted to add.
On top of that, Don Sweeney still has a hockey team to run. 100% of his time cannot be dedicated to Jeremy Swayman. I know there was a lot of angst and a lot of anger when Sweeney told, I forget which reporter it was, that asked him if there was anything new on the Sweeney or on the Swayman contract talks, said, let's kick it to next week. Don Sweeney had 11 invites at the Prospects Challenge to watch and see if he could sign any one of those players. Not to mention watching them, talking to them, getting to know them on a personal level, talking to their agent to see where they might be at, so on and so forth. He still has a hockey team to run. Hence, here we are today, Tuesday, which is the next week he was talking about.
Yep.
I have it from another player's agent, plays for the Bruins, and would be directly affected by a Jeremy Swayman signing that says he expects the deal to be announced either tonight or very soon. His exact words, either tonight or very soon. I know there's other members of the Boston media that are hinting that a deal is done. And I won't speak for them and put words in their mouth, but, follow them, see what they're saying. I won't get into any personal conversations I had with them because that's not fair to them. Just follow them and see what they're at. But all indications are that this is very close and expected to be done soon. Am I worried that Jeremy Swayman won't be at camp tomorrow? No, because it's just medicals. They're not going to be on the ice. It's just medicals.
Would you be worried if it's not done by entering Friday? If they just had a couple last minute things to kind of tidy up? I mean, obviously we're hearing, as you mentioned, later tonight, maybe tomorrow, but if something kind of pushes it back into Thursday, it's not quite done yet. When do you start reading into that it's not done yet?
I'm not going to worry at all because, hi, Court. I see you saying hi.
Hey, Court. And I also want to give shout out to Jeff, who's listening in a grocery store right now. So
hey, while you're there, Jeff, can you pick me up some beans, please?
Get him some cookies too. He loves his cookies.
I love cookies. Now, I'm not worried because there's a lot of I's to dot, T's to cross when it comes to a contract. But the fact that everybody is confident that something is very close, it's just the finer details.
Yeah. Now the question is what does the contract look like? Is it a long-term deal? Is it a bridge deal? Is it just a 1 year kick the can down the road kind of thing? Honestly, we will discuss that once it's out, because until we know what it is, it's not worth really dissecting what may or may not have happened in the negotiations and stuff like that. Because for all we know, it's an 8-year deal. It's a 1 year deal. We'll see.
There was a tweet out there, maybe, I don't know, about 20 minutes ago that said Swayman had signed for 8 times 8. Don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't think it'll come down to that. Appreciate you watching, Kendall, and everybody who's tuned in right now. So, Dom, I know it's not a lot. It's not what everybody wants to hear on Swayman, and if we get more, we'll talk about it. But you mentioned it. We pulled it up before. The roster. Do you want to start with the goaltenders who will be there, or do you want to start with the forward group and work our way down?
It doesn't really matter because by Friday, a lot of these players are going to be. Or wait, when does Providence camp open?
I'd have to double check and pull it up. Let me see if I can find that while we're going over it. But let's work our way up because Swayman, goaltender. Let's talk about the goalies first. Bischel, Bussy, DiPietro, Korpisalo, and Nolan. Is it Meyer?
Meyer. Bischel and Meyer, AHL contracts. As soon as Providence camp opens up, they'll be gone.
Makes sense. Let me see if I can find out when that starts.
Now, there definitely is going to be a battle between Bussy, Korpisalo, And a lot of people don't mention DiPietro, but don't sleep on this kid. Been watching him play now for, God, what is it, 6, 7 years? Do not sleep on this kid.
Yeah, there was talk at the end of last year that he had actually surpassed Bussy on the depth chart.
Yeah, he has all the ability to be another UC Saros. That ability is in him.
I think the bigger question when it comes to the goaltenders, obviously, like you said, Bischel, Meyer, they're not. I mean, we want to see him do well, but no one's expecting either one of them to make a push for the NHL roster. We know that we're expecting Swayman to be on the roster. At that point, it's Bussy, DiPietro, Corpusalo. How do you pick 2 out of 3 to go to Providence? Or do you pick 3 to stay up? Swayman, Corpusalo, and Bussy, or like how does that all play out? I think to your point, that backup position is going to be a real battle. I know there's been some talk about Bussy coming into camp slimmed down, really ready to fight out for that start for the backup position. Corpusalo's got the contract working against him, and it's going to be interesting because a team like Vancouver may look for a Bussy or a DiPietro on waivers because they don't know what's going on with Demko, and Shilovs has a little something going on that they are not quite sure how that's going to go. So
yeah,
and they're familiar with DiPietro. We got him from them.
Which is why they would never take him back.
Probably not.
I've been saying it for almost 2 months now. July 16th, I first wrote about it. We talked about it on the podcast following that it's possible they start the season with 3 goaltenders. If Bussy and Corpusalo are even, if they're dead even, okay, they could carry 3 goaltenders and look to make a trade.
Yeah. There's also the idea that Corpusalo could be sent down to Providence so that he can get more minutes, he can get more one-on-one with the coaching staff and build his game back up and then bring him back up, knowing that most teams probably won't put a waiver claim on him because of his contract and because of where he was at the end of last year. That's why this training camp and these preseason games are going to be so interesting for the goaltending battle, and especially how they use them. I don't expect Swayman to get a lot of time because we know what we're expecting. And I will just add in that the black and gold scrimmage is on Saturday the 21st in Providence, and then the first preseason game for the Boston Bruins is the 22nd, the following day. So literally a week from today, we will have games to talk about.
Yeah, back to Corpusalo in Providence. I see a lot of people saying that he should go down there, get a lot of minutes, and have Bob Essenza help him get back to his game. Bob Essenza doesn't coach the goalies in Providence. Mike Dunham does. Bob Essenza has his hands full at the NHL level. Doesn't spend a lot of time with the guys in Providence. So, yeah, you could have him in Providence playing a lot and trying to get his game back, but it won't be Bob Essenza working with him.
No, I think working with one-on-one with Mike Dunham.
No, I'm just clearing out for the people out there that say send him to Providence and let goalie Bob work with him. It doesn't work that way.
No, he'll work with him during camp though. So
yeah.
Point being though is it's going to have a tell based off of how well they do in the first couple preseason games. Mm-hmm. Now, ahead in front of those goaltenders, we have a lot of folks who you'd expect: Brandon Carlo, McAvoy, Peak, so on and so forth. The 6 starters really that we know of, and then you have Drew Bavaro, Frederick Brunet, Michael Callahan, Jackson Edward, Loke Johansson, Ryan Mast, Mason Millman, Ian Mitchell, Jordan Osterley, Alec Regula, Billy Sweezy. So that they're the ones who are going to be looking for the minutes in Providence.
And according to Mark Diver, Alec Regula will not be ready for camp.
Yep.
He's dealing with an injury.
Yep, he's recovering from an off-season surgery, I believe, is what he had mentioned. So, again, not a lot unexpected in the defensive group. I'm glad to see guys like Bavaro and Brunet, Edward, all those guys get in the mix for these first couple days of camp. But let's be honest, none of them are really going to crack the NHL roster barring injury. Not this year.
No, and that's what they're working towards, is being the best they can be and be ready for a call-up if one's coming.
Right. And I love the fact that they'll get some time with Brandon Carlo, with Hampus Lindholm, and, Charlie McAvoy, Nikita Zadorov. I think like a guy like Jackson Edward, if he can watch the defense of a Brandon Carlo, but the physicality of a Zadorov, and, he's no slouch as a puck mover. So watching an all-around game by Charlie McAvoy, if he can be there with those guys on the ice, even for 2 weeks, like before you send him down, he can learn a lot from that if he wants to. And he seems like a player who wants to learn and get to the NHL.
Yeah. I mean, we know who our 7 defensemen are going to be. It's cut and dry. There's no debate to be had there.
No, it will be interesting, though, in the preseason to see, say, a Jackson Edward and Hampus Lindholm pair for, a preseason game, just to kind of see how he plays off of a guy like Lindholm, or if he plays on his left side and plays next to a guy like McAvoy, and just kind of see where, his game, Bavaro's game, where their games are at compared to the NHL starters.
Yeah, there's guys that are not at that level, just not. Jackson Edward is not ready. Trust me, nobody likes him more than I do in the 500 people here in this group. But he is not ready to play hockey games with Charlie McAvoy. Trust me.
I'm just saying,
even in an exhibition game, that's not what exhibition is for. It's to determine whether Nikita Zadorov can play with Charlie McAvoy, not whether Jackson Edward can.
No, but I'm just saying at some point they'll get a minute or two together. We can hope.
Not a game.
Not a whole game. No,
everybody gets a minute or two together just based on how line changes work.
That's what I'm talking about, Dom. I'm trying to be reasonable.
Yeah, but nobody is out. Nobody in the coaching staff is out there to purposely put Jackson Edward on with Charlie McAvoy to see if he can handle it. Because Jackson Edward himself is at least 3 years away.
Yeah, but it'll be fun to watch him. Dave from What's Going On Twitter has jumped in as well. Not sure where that ends up going, but hopefully we get the rest
from
of that
Niagara
comment.
Falls.
Probably.
People from Niagara Falls always say, "Hi, I'm George from," and then don't tell you where they're from. Only from Niagara. Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Niagara Falls, Canada.
Yeah, the Canadian side.
Yeah.
Let's see. Has a question.
See?
What are the order of yep, Dave Niagara. Yep. Okay. What are the order of call-ups for defensemen from Providence? As you see now, we'll say, if someone does get hurt. I think it'll depend on who gets hurt.
I don't think so, because you have Waterspoon that can go on either side.
That's true.
But for instance, if it's a Brandon Carlo, I could see an Alex Regula if he's healthy. Depends on when the injury is. But just to pick 2 guys, I think Ian Mitchell or Jordan Osterley would be the first 2 called up.
Yeah, and then to your point, where is Regula's health? He probably is in that top 3 call-ups too, depending on his health. Let's see. And then forwards, not really any major surprises in the forward group. Joey Abate, John Beecher, Justin Brazeau. Let me get it pulled back up here for folks to read along here. Patrick Brown, Charlie Coyle, Riley Duran, John Farinacci, Trent Frederick, Morgan Geeky, Brett Harrison, Tyler Johnson, as we all know, is on a PTO, Max Jones, Mark Kostelik, Cole, is it Kopke? Kopke, Trevor Kuntar, Vinny Lettieri, Elias Lindholm, Fabian Lysell, Brad Marchand, Mark McLaughlin, Georgi Merkulov, Jackson Nelson, David Pasternak, Matt Poitras, Riley Tuft, Jeffrey Veal, and Pavel Zacha. No major surprises there.
Well, there's one name missing that I would like to see there, and maybe I'm missing it. My eyesight is not the greatest, but Adam Matura.
Nope, he is not listed.
Yeah, I thought he was great at the Prospects Challenge. Probably their best player. I know he's on an AHL contract only, but so are a lot of guys that they invited. Like, I know Joey Abadi had an NHL contract for 3 days? Seems like just 3 days. He's going on an AHL contract. Adam Matura, who at least looks like he could have a future, is not there. That's kind of disappointing. But other than that, Riley Duran was hitting the most in the second game at the Prospect Challenge. So according to Mark Dibber, again, had to get a root canal. That's why he didn't play Monday. So hopefully he's ready to go. This is where the battle is going to be. Fabian Lysell. I'll even throw Vinny Lettieri in there. Georgi Merkulov, Matthew Poitras, and I would throw Riley Tuft in there. And that's about it. Watching those guys battle. Oh, and of course, Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson on the PTO will be interesting because obviously I don't think the plan is to have him skyrocket up the depth chart and take a position. However, being the veteran that he is, the multi-Stanley Cup winner that he is, if he still has it in the tank and he's able to do that, he shifts everybody down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it becomes interesting. He's going to have to force their hand to say no to Georgie, no to Fabian, no to Poitras, and, no to who was the other one that you mentioned?
Riley Tuft.
Thank you.
And Vinny Lettieri.
And Lettieri, yeah. So he's got a lot of work to do. But, I mean, I would guess Johnson's probably somewhere in the middle of that grouping. Only has to jump over 3 or 4 of those names.
To me, here's the 100% for sure's. Pavel Zacha, Elias Lindholm, David Pasternak, Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Morgan Geeky, Max Jones, John Beecher, and a toss-up between Mark Kostelik and Justin Brazeau as the 12th and 13th forwards. So there's really 2 spots. Can Fabian Lysell beat out Johnson and Lettieri for that 2 right wing spot? And can Matt Poitras hold on against we'll throw Tyler Johnson at the right wing and the center. 3 center. Can Matt Poitras hold off Tyler Johnson and Georgi Merkulov for the 3C?
Yeah.
Is he healthy enough to?
Yeah, those are the questions that we've been asking most of the summer. The one I'm going to be keeping a very good eye on Justin Brazeau in the preseason because I'm not as sold as many are on him making this roster right out of camp. I think he will be, looked at heavily. I mean, as a big body, what gives me more of that confidence in that question? And Big Mike is jumping in. Do you think Brazeau can compete for that second line wing? I think he's the wrong guy for the 4th line. Mike, I'm questioning whether or not he's even going to make the team out of camp. Because if you go back and watch him in the playoffs last year, Dom, it's that. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully you're getting some news for us. Feel free to interrupt me if you are. But you've heard me mention it numerous times on this show. Justin Brazeau as a big body guy getting pushed off the puck, losing board battles, and he's not the first one to the puck all the time. So I really think part of why they went out and they added a guy like Kostelic and Max Jones, they didn't need both of them. I think they're not as sold on Brazeau. They want other bigger bodied guys who can get to the puck and win the battles, win the races. And, I'm not sure that Justin Brazeau is going to be that guy.
Yeah, and you just take Brad Marchand's words about being able to play with he and Charlie Coyle, that you've got to be able to play defense. And I've watched Brazeau play now for 9 years. Defense has never been part of his game. He's all offense. He just doesn't have the speed for defense. I can just picture him coming back on the back check at 1/3 or 1/4 the speed that Brad Marchand does, and Brad Marchand throwing a conniption fit.
Yeah.
I don't see him as a second line player, and I know a lot of people are going to hate me for that.
I don't. And Matrix jumping in Kostelic over Brazeau purely because of his skating speed and experience. Also adding in Kostelic as a great guy on the faceoff dot. I wasn't even going to mention that as far as the spot for the roster. Kostelic could be a great fit on the fourth line because he can take those draws. And then if you also have Beecher in there, you've got a couple guys that can not only do faceoffs in either zone if you need to win one, but they can also play on the wing. Swede Chef.
Not only that, they're going to, because of his skating and his speed, the Bruins are going to be teaching Kostelic how to kill penalties.
Right.
You can't teach Justin Brazeau how to kill penalties.
No.
And that's what they want. They want their fourth line to kill penalties. Max Jones can kill penalties. John Beecher can kill penalties. Mark Kostelic will be taught. He was told right after they acquired him, get in touch with Joe Sacco. And they've been in constant communication all summer long about penalty killing.
Oh, yeah. No doubt in my mind. I'd be willing to bet that if you have a 3-man unit because you're down 2 guys or it's a 4-on-3 in the other team's favor, your 3 guys that you will see is going to be Carlo, Beecher, and probably Kostelic once he's better at killing those penalties. By the end of the year, those are the 3 guys they're going to want out there in the most critical 4-on-3 situations, and then add a guy like Jones or Marchand, Coyle, someone like that as that 4th guy. Mike also says, I don't like Brazeau on the 4th line at all. His best skill is offensive around the net, and if not using that, what is the point? Appreciate the compliment from Matrix here, saying that I nailed it. Mike also says, my point has only been if he isn't on the 2nd line, then he should be in Providence.
But my counter to that is what if Kostelic fails? Okay. There's no reason why Brazeau can't play the 4th line and get some PP time.
I don't think that's going to be how. I think that the hand is going to have to be forced. I think coming out of camp, Brazeau is going to be the guy who sees Providence. That doesn't mean he won't get called up later in the year. That doesn't.
They need a 13th forward, though.
That's where it's going to depend on what happens with the right wing on the 2nd line. Because if Lysell can take that, that's when you're going to have to figure out who's the 13th forward. Is it going to be Brazeau? Is it going to be Johnson? Is it going to be Merkulov or Poitras? Or, how is that going to work out? Is this the year?
They're not signing a guy from a PTO to be the 13th forward.
I lean Johnson that direction. I lean that direction. But if Johnson ends up taking that right wing spot, now you have a little bit more going on there. Also, what about a guy like Mark McLaughlin? What's he going to come into camp look like? He could be a 13th forward.
No.
You don't think so?
A guy like Mark McLaughlin, you want playing.
Tough.
Your young prospects, you want them playing.
I mean,
Tuft is no longer young. He's the same age as Max Jones. What is he? 20, 25, 26?
that's where the decision's going to have to be made. I don't know if Justin Brazeau is going to crack it as a 13th forward, as a fourth line guy. I think he's got more work to do, and I'd rather see him get minutes down in Providence, to your point, to develop those deficiencies in his game. Let's see. G. Wally says, Sweeney said today, although like the size now, if you can't keep up, you won't be on the big club. So
arrive on time. It's been the catchphrase all summer long. Wants players that arrive on time. And by arrive on time, he means gets in on the forecheck quickly.
Mike says, wonder if Beecher is in tough to hold his spit. I'm not sure if that's a reference I'm not getting.
Spot.
Or a typo. His spot. I think Beecher's got a spot on the fourth line between his ability to play center and take draws and kick over to the left wing. I don't see Beecher being kicked off of that fourth line to start the season, at least. Mike also suggested Tuft for the 13th forward.
Yeah, I could see that. Big kid, loves the physical game, can really skate. Drafted by Dallas in 2016, one spot after Max Jones. Had a tough time cracking a Dallas roster. Then went to Colorado, had an even tougher time cracking that roster. But he put up points in the American Hockey League. I think this kid can play in the NHL, not at a top 6 level, maybe not even at a top 9 level, but I think he could play in the bottom 6 or fourth line role. He's got the tools for that. It's just he's going to have to beat out Max Jones or Mark Kastelic. He won't have to beat out. Well, I guess John Beecher too, because Kastelic can play the middle, and Tuft and Jones can play the wing.
Yeah, and some of that could be that trickle-down effect from the right wing on the second line spot, because we talked about it before. What if Trent Frederick wins that role? And you want to elevate Max Jones to the left side of Matthew Poitras on the third line and have Jones on the left with Geeky on the right. Well, now that's opened up a right wing second or fourth line spot, and maybe Tuft can earn that, and you have Beecher, Kastelic, and Tuft. And then now that opens the door for maybe Brazeau to be that 13th forward, but we'll have to see what's going on. Says Niagara Dave. Sweeney mentioned speed today, which was previously mentioned. Named Tuff as a guy with plenty of speed. He doesn't know much about him. Does he make a push? He's a big kid. So hopefully that conversation just answered that question for you. Matrix adds a lot of tough decisions for Sweeney and the coaching staff. These are the tough decisions that we like to see them put. They put themselves in this position. Let's not forget that. They could have done a lot less when it came to the roster, but instead they went out and they added Max Jones. They included Mark Kastelic in that trade of Linus Ullmark. They didn't have to get him back.
A lot of teams wish they had these tough decisions to make. A lot. Absolutely. I just want to add for Dave that yes, Tuft could make a push to make the roster. He can. I think he's capable.
Yeah, and I wouldn't really consider him a dark horse at pushing for the roster spot. He was a former first-round pick, I believe you said, right?
Mm-hmm. So, exactly one spot after Max Jones.
Right, and that's something that we know Don Sweeney loves to do, is go out and get first-round talent that hasn't been panning out for other teams. I mean, think about
Pavel Zacha.
I was going to say Zacha. He was a first-round pick. They've done it before. Zadorov was a first-round pick. McAvoy was a first-round pick of our own.
Lindholm was a first. Hampus Lindholm was a first-round pick.
And they like going out and getting those guys that haven't panned out because they can get them for cheap. I mean, if you're able to hit on either Max Jones or Riley Tuft, you're batting 50% and you fill the hole in your roster. That's all you're looking to do. And neither one of them are costing you much against the cap.
I think Jones is costing $1 million for 2 years, and Tuft, I think, is $775.
That sounds about right for both of them. So, like you said, these are decisions that other teams wish they had to make. Matrix says, isn't Tuft like 6'6", 230? He's a big body.
I thought he was 6'4". Could be wrong.
I don't remember if he's 6'4" or 6'6", but he's as they say, he's a big boy. So appreciate you clarifying that, Mike. And then Jerry says, curious to see how you view the impact Jay Leach will have on the D. And Dom, this is something that your conversation about it has gone back for, I would say, well over a year at this point, because last year they didn't have the defensive coach on the bench.
Yeah, I'm surprised that my thoughts on it haven't gone viral. Look, I'll go back to the beginning when this whole thing started. I think somebody needed to pay the price for what happened 2 seasons ago on the coaching staff, and it didn't. John Gruden left for greener pastures to become head coach of the Toronto Marlies, okay? Left him without a coach behind the bench for the defense. They had one who's really a skills and skating coach and stuck him upstairs, okay? Guys like Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, they had career, if not career years, near career years with John Gruden behind the bench.
Let's also not forget that was the year that Hampus Lindholm finished 5th in Norris voting.
Yeah. A year later, there's no coach back there, and the defense struggled.
And not to mention the too many men on penalties.
Right? Yeah. So, I lost my train of thought. Oh,
John
Gruden, whether it's Jay Leach or John Gruden behind the bench, it will make a huge difference to this decor. So I'm just glad they have a coach behind the bench to coach the defense.
Yeah,
that it's Jay Leach, it's a positive because he knows some of the players and he basically knows the system. Because Montgomery's system isn't really that different than what the Bruins are used to. He's a little bit more of a hybrid when it comes to zone coverage or man-on-man coverage, but it's still basically a zone coverage defense.
Yeah, so, I'm just glad, like you said, that they have someone back there, and I think it'll make a night and day difference just because it adds, like you said, someone to take that responsibility off of the head coach and only has to focus on the 6 defensemen on the bench.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if there was anything else you had to add in there. Matrix says that Elite Prospects has Tuft listed at 6'6", 231.
Yeah, you can never go by Elite Prospects. They're all over the place. And you know what? It may be right. He may be 6'6". I thought it was 6'4". But I would suggest when you want to get an accurate size on the player, either go to NHL.com, BostonBruins.com, or ProvidenceBruins.com to get the official stats.
And we'll get the official measurements tomorrow when they report and weigh in.
Yeah.
So it could be a very short 6'6", could be a very tall 6'4". We will have to find out.
Now, if you ever want to compare what they are now to what they were when they were drafted, is you could always go to just Google NHL final draft rankings for whatever year the player was drafted in, and you'll get their official, actually measured by the NHL, their official height and weight at the time that they were drafted. So in Riley Tuff's case, just search final NHL draft rankings 2016. Go down to, I think he was selected 26th, and you'll find Riley Tuff, and it'll give his.
Yeah, because it's in the NHL records.
Yeah.
Yep, it searches the records.nhl.com draft section. So let me see if I can find Tuft. He was 25th overall, and they had him listed at 6'5", 211.
Okay, so he probably is 6'6" now.
And Max Jones was listed at 6'2", 206.
Max Jones, I know, is 6'3" right now.
Yeah, I mean, he was, he's probably grown a little bit since then as well. So, but 24th, 25th, and then 26th was Tage Thompson to the Blues.
Mm-hmm.
So a nice little draft history examination right there. But yeah, like we ran through our lineups, the guys that we think are going to make the roster. What would you look for out of a guy like Joey Abate, however you want to pronounce it?
I'm not looking for anything. He's going to be in the American Hockey League, and he's going to be there to stick up for the kids. Simple as that. They can't expect Jackson Edward to go in there as a rookie and do it all. So a guy like him, he may end up even being in Maine, because when you look, Bonnie, I believe, is a left wing. So they've got Harrison, they've got Kuntar, unless they move either one of them to the middle. Jeffrey Vale, who, signed a 1-year, $775,000 contract, two-way, but he's also there to protect the young guys in Providence. You've got Kopke there. Tuft may be in the NHL. He may be in Providence as another left winger. Owen Peterson is another left winger on an AHL deal, likely bound for Maine. Evan Vierling, what a prospect challenge he had, on an American Hockey League deal. A lot for him will depend what happens with Merkulov. If Merkulov sticks in the NHL, he could very well be the second-line center in Providence.
That would be an interesting development to see, obviously, like you said, especially if that means Merkulov is sticking in the National Hockey League. Now, speaking
of
the
two best players, I don't know. I don't want to shortchange Brett Harrison. So I'll say two of the three best players at the Prospect Challenge in Evan Vierling and Adam Machura are on AHL contracts.
Now, for those who don't know, can you just explain the process? So let's take Machura as an example. Obviously, he's not listed on the training camp roster. He will be in the Providence camp when that opens up. He'll be on the Providence roster. What are the procedures to get someone like that a call up to the National Hockey League?
He has to sign an NHL contract.
And how would that affect them as far as I'm guessing someone like that would sign for like a league minimum deal, and then it just becomes, would they be able to just turn his contract into a two-way contract?
The same way they did with the Body last year. They signed him midseason to an NHL contract. It's that simple. The problem with Machura and Vierling is any NHL team can come knocking and sign him to an NHL contract tomorrow. That's why I'm curious to see what happens, because Machura was probably their best player in the Prospect Challenge. I would say Harrison was their second best, and Vierling was their third best player.
We got Court jumping back in, Matrix saying that he is intrigued to watch Max Jones. I will say this, Court is asking for what has been deemed a like spike. He wants everybody to like the stream. So I like that idea. Let's all follow Court's example and do that when you have a second. That is appreciated by us because it helps more people find us. So I appreciate that it came from Court, because when other people ask for it, it's even nicer.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever listened to anything Court told me to do, but it's possible. It's possible I may have on occasion. So, yeah, it's the other kid I really liked. Might have to come back to this because I can't remember his name right now.
from
Uh,
the prospects challenge here.
Yeah, from the Ottawa 67s was there on an invite.
You know what? We've got almost 600
Charlie
people.
Hilton.
There we
Charlie
go.
Hilton.
I was just say, if it didn't come to you, one of the almost 600 people watching would have known the name. So
Yeah, so he had a great fight, but besides the fight, I thought he looked really, really good. The thing with this kid is his birthday was Sunday. He turned 18. He was the youngest player there. He was the youngest player in the draft last year, making it on the last day of eligibility. He only played 40 some odd games for the 67s in the OHL. So nobody really got a good enough look at him, except me, maybe, because I watch every game, every team, 68 games, never miss them. So I kind of tweeted out after the game. My off the wall take was to sign this kid today, because you can sign an undrafted player until the OHL season begins. Then he has to go back, but you can sign him as a free agent until then. And then I explained why. Because you can send him back to Ottawa for 3 years and his contract slides. And because he signed as an 18-year-old, he could spend a year in the AHL and his contract would slide. And then his entry-level contract would kick in. So you really have this kid for 7 years as opposed to 3. Okay? And that I honestly thought, I really do believe he will get drafted next year. So here's a kid you can get for nothing right now. Won't cost you a contract spot because it slides. May cost you some signing bonuses, petty cash, and it's not my money, so I don't give a shit.
That's the bigger part.
So there's that. It's a free player, and you've got to replenish your prospect pool. To which his agent replied, I like this idea.
Question is, can he sell Don Sweeney on it?
He's also 6'6", a right winger who can skate, play physical, is a playmaker and a goal scorer. I don't know what there is to lose.
I'm with you on it. I love the fact that, like you said, you can have him for up to 7 years if you utilize every year that the contract can slide, which basically I look at it as far as managing the player as an asset, going, okay, if he's not developed within 2 to 3 years, that's okay. We still have him for another 3 to 4 years of control where we can continue his development. Now, that also means that in 2 years, if he's coming up from the Ottawa 67s and you go, let's throw him in Providence now because he could be ready in a year or two. Okay, well, you have that option too. There's nothing wrong with that. It gives you options, and that's one thing that we know Don Sweeney loves to give himself is options.
Yeah, and he's in a good program in Ottawa with a good coach in Dave Cameron who prepares players for the NHL. There's a lot to like about this kid.
In Ottawa, we know how Bruins management likes to have their prospects in their backyard. Mm-hmm. No, Ottawa's not BC. It's not BU. It's not even Quinnipiac or Providence. But you know what? Ottawa's not that far either. So you can get out there and you can watch him and you can work with him and you can be involved in his development.
Not only that, Ottawa is so close to Quebec that you have both their OHL scouts and both their QMJHL scouts right there. So there's 4 scouts right there next door to him.
Oh, yeah. It seems almost like a no-brainer. Mike asks, can Hilton skate? You have to love the other aspects of his game. He's probably a mid-round pick next year. Where if he were drafted, if the draft was now, where would you project him to go?
That's too hard to say. Too hard to say.
Let's see how he looks in Ottawa this year, and then maybe we'll have you project him out a little bit. Let's see. And then also thoughts on Nelson, and is it possible Machura was accidental roster lineup miss? It is strange.
I don't know that he was a miss. Maybe there's an injury there we don't know about. But I find it hard to believe that they would miss it, just because of how thoroughly they go over these things. As for Nelson, I was disappointed a bit in his Prospects Challenge games. Yeah, he scored a nice goal, and yeah, I did tweet out that he can really rip the puck, but for a guy his size, I expected him to dominate more, especially against some of the smaller D, and I really didn't see that. So I'm kind of disappointed with the tournament that he had. But you've heard me preach a million times, never base anything off of just one small tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting him back into camp and that sort of thing is always good too. Even for some folks who might have struggled at the Prospects Challenge. I unfortunately was busy moving and then getting back to work after moving all day Saturday and Sunday. So I did not have the opportunity I would have liked to sit down and watch the Prospects Challenge. That being said, as we've talked about, 11 camp invites. Yes, it would have been nice to watch, Jackson Nelson or, Machura, all the guys who were able to participate and did get invites. It would have been nice to be able to see, what can we expect from Bischel down in Providence if he ends up staying there. Maybe he ends up in Maine. All that stuff is TBD. But unfortunately, I didn't get that. But anybody who did struggle has an opportunity, like you said, to come in and change that by having a good, strong camp.
Yeah. I got to work at 6:30 in the morning, Monday morning, and at 8 o'clock, I realized, oh shit, the Bruins play at 10 o'clock, so I left work. But I want to touch on Andrew Oak because a lot of people are saying he had a very good game, even though they lost in overtime against Columbus. What you see with Andrew Oak is what you get. So one day you may watch him, like that Saturday, and he was good. And the next game you might watch him and he's shaky and gives up some shaky goals. He was only invited because the kid they originally invited failed his physical and was injured. So that's the only reason he was there. I've seen some people say they should sign Oak, but I've seen enough of him to know that, yeah, he can have one good game like that and then 2 bad ones and then a good one and then a bad one, then 2 good ones and 2 bad ones. Just not consistent enough for me.
Yeah, and someone like that, like maybe there's something that you can work on his game for and whatnot, but the Bruins aren't in a position, like when we say they're in a position to take on prospects with promise, but who are projects, we're talking about the Dean Letourneaus. We're talking about the, Jackson Edward, even. You could consider him a project based on where he was drafted. Ryan Mast. Like, these are guys that, if everything clicks for them, are going to be great players. they're also far enough down the road where, like you said, Jackson Edward is at least 2-3 years away from making the NHL lineup. And that's okay. You have the next 2-ish years of your defense likely covered. So you can have him take his time. Now, if that 2 years turns into 7, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If it turns into 3, and then you look at him and go, okay, we oversaturated him a little bit, but next year he's going to be a solid NHL player, then fine. No harm, no foul in taking a little extra longer to determine that. Court has a question. He wants to know, does Tyler Johnson make this team?
I don't know. TBD.
It depends on what he has left in the tank. Honestly, that is genuinely what I know. It sounds like a cop out. I don't think he has enough left in the tank from what I've seen over the last couple of years. Injuries have taken their toll on him. I don't see him making this team if Liesel is serviceable in that right wing spot, if Merkulov is able to take the left wing or the center spot. There's a lot of things that I think have to really, the marble has to bounce the right way and land in right one spot for Tyler Johnson to make this roster. There was one other player I was thinking of for a 13th forward that doesn't excite anybody, but could fill in for it that I wasn't thinking of earlier, and that was Patrick Brown.
No.
You don't think so?
I want him in Providence working with the Farinaccis, the Kuntars, the Durans.
Okay.
Because if you listen to, I believe it was Riley Duran. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was him. How highly he spoke of Patrick Brown. Actually, how many of the young players in Providence spoke about how he helped them out transitioning to professional. You need guys like that, kind of like Tommy Cross, a career Providence Bruin. Well, I guess it wasn't really a career Providence Bruin, but a guy who helped bring the young kids along all the time. So
no, absolutely. And I don't have a problem with him playing that role. I just could see him also being a 13th forward, depending on how the roster itself shakes out.
I could see it, but ideally, I think they want him in Providence just for that reason.
I would take it. There's a lot of things that I think ideally, we would like to see happen, and that's what's going to make it interesting. And Kendall jumps in saying, I hope he, meaning Tyler Johnson, doesn't make the roster, hoping Liesel and Poitras make it. That's where the difficulty is going to be, though, because if Poitras makes the third line center role, then and Liesel makes the right wing spot on the second line, what happens with Georgi Merkulov?
He goes and plays for Spartak Moscow next season.
I was going to say, he's not probably going back to Providence.
Well, he wouldn't have any choice right now. He's under contract. So,
yeah, long term, he would probably go
next
back.
Year, and he would probably end up going to Spartak Moscow.
Do you see that being a realistic possibility where Merkulov doesn't make this roster?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so do I. And I like that kid's shot a lot.
Yeah,
his physical, actual shot.
There's a possibility, like a realistic possibility Liesel doesn't. There's a realistic possibility that Poitras just isn't fully recovered and has been off the ice for how long now? 9 months, and needs to get his game back in Providence.
He looked good at the prospect, not the prospects challenge, at development camp, and I know he didn't partake in the scrimmages, and I know he didn't go to the prospects challenge like we had talked about. He might, was a rare, slim possibility, but just to get his legs underneath him. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in camp. Like you said, this kid works his ass off all the time. So it'll be very interesting to see where he's at. Matrix says that he thinks Merkulov gets traded, maybe. I
For
don't
what?
know.
What are you giving them?
Yeah,
Future considerations?
maybe. That's the question. Who's going to look at Georgi Merkulov and say, "I want to trade for that"? If he doesn't make this roster, Kendall wants to know how is Fabian Lysell defensively. He needs to be well rounded in his play to make it.
I think he needs work. I'm not going to deny that. He needs some serious work. But I think watching a guy for like David Pastrnak, not playing with him, watching him will pay dividends. And then playing with a Brad Marchand and a Charlie Coyle, they're going to make him play defense. And then not only will they make him, they will teach him. So how much rope are they willing to give him is the real question. Will they give him 25 games to see if he's getting it? Or will they give him 5 and say, no, it's not working out? The question will always come down to how much rope is he going to get?
And there is another, albeit slim possibility, but if Merkulov doesn't make the team, Tyler Johnson does make the team, you could see Freddie move to that second line wing. You could see Jones on the left. You could see, Lysell get some second line or third line right wing time and, earn his way up to that second line as his defensive game comes around, depending on how Montgomery wants to utilize the lines. I agree with you. I think he would add more offensively to that line and would learn defense that way, but it's Montgomery. We've seen him do everything and anything with this lineup.
The options are endless. It all comes down to how much rope they want to give him. He's not going to be in a better position to learn defensively than to watch David Pastrnak, who had to go through the same process and where he's at now, and learning from Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle. There's no other better option on this team. The question is the rope.
I was going to say Pastrnak had one better advantage, and he was able to learn from Patrice Bergeron. But to your point, on this team are those keywords. Jeff has a great question. He admits he's probably butchering it in the front end, but basically what it comes down to is the Bruins players that they iced at the Prospects Challenge. None of them were first and second round prospects like Columbus, New Jersey, Pittsburgh. They were all first and second rounders. So ultimately the question is, does that factor into the performance that you grade the Bruins prospects on because they weren't drafted as high as the competition that they were facing at the Prospects Challenge? Jeff, I hope I did that question as much justice as possible. It is a confusing way to put it all together, but it is a great question.
Yeah. I take everything into consideration. Quality of competition is one of the things. That said, you can't fault those other teams for icing the teams that they do. The Bruins have 13 players in college, another 3 in the USHL that are committed to college, who are ineligible to play in this tournament. So we didn't get to see all of I guess I don't want to say the best, all of their top prospects. Like we didn't get to see a Riley Walsh. We didn't get to see a Don Lachmelis or an Oscar Yelvik or even Dean Letourneau for that matter, a Chris Pelosi or a Beckett Hendrickson, because they're not allowed to play in the tournament. Did it affect the individual player's performance? I guess for a person watching these guys for the first time, the answer might be yes. For me, I use it to grade it differently because, for instance, Trevor Kuntar I know what he plays like. I've seen him in college. I've seen him in Providence. And then, as far as I'm concerned, underwhelmed me at the Prospects Challenge. Because before free agency, he was my dark horse to make the team until they filled those spots. But is that because of the competition he was playing against? No, it's because Kuntar didn't play to the level I know he's capable of. Brett Harrison, on the other hand, who I've watched also for years, way back with the Oshawa Generals, I've stated the issues I've had with him many a times, beginning with intensity. I saw big improvements in him. Is it still perfect? No, he still has some ways to go, and he has to be consistent at it. But he was playing the same opponents that Trevor Kuntar was. So why is one elevated and the other one slipped? So yeah, to people who are watching for these guys for the first time, I can see where they would think the quality of competition has something to do with it. But as I always say, you can't base everything on one tournament. You've got to take their whole body of work. You've got to know what the player's like. And is he playing to previous levels? And I hope that answers your question, Jeff.
I think it does. And he did mention that I nailed the question, which was great because I get how difficult that could be. And that's one of those things where, like you said, taking the whole picture into account, a guy like Charlie Hilton that we were talking about before, he's pretty much the youngest player there. He had minimal time in the OHL last season because of his age, and yet he still turned some heads he caught your attention at this camp. To your point, he will probably get drafted next year. He will have a full OHL season under his belt. Sometimes you have to look at the situation and take a chance. Would signing Hilton to a contract now be a risk? Minimal, but yes. Do you also want to risk that player getting drafted by somebody else because of that full season that he has and you don't get a chance at him anymore? That's the debate. And to your point, taking it all into consideration, if he's playing against, first round picks, Cutter Gauthiers of the world, and, those types of players, and he's standing out, then maybe you do take the risk on offering him a contract because he is standing out against presumable NHL talent already, and he's still that far away. You don't think if that was Connor Bedard that people had a chance to see a year early before his draft eligibility and signed to a contract by one day, people would be fighting all over for him. Mm-hmm. Not to say that Hilton is Bedard. It's just it's the whole body of work. You need to see what has Hilton done up to this point, and you probably have better access to that information than I do. So,
I watched him last season. I bet you I've seen 90% of his games.
Which is why when you say I would take that risk, I trust you on that because I know how your projections work. I know what you've seen before and how the risk is probably worth it for him. I trust you on that one, but I'll be interested to watch him this year. So Matrix jumps out and says Fabian Lysell will be attached to a choke chain this year.
Possible. It's what we do know is the only thing we know for certain is Jim Montgomery is a lame duck coach. He's without a contract beyond this season. And it's been a long, long time since the Bruins were in that situation with a coach. So he needs wins. He needs wins in the regular season, and he especially needs wins in the playoffs in order to get another contract. They promoted Joe Sacco to associate coach. They brought Jay Leach in, who actually interviewed for Montgomery's job. Um, so um, a lot of players, may be on a shorter leash than they would have been a year ago.
Yeah, that balancing act is going to be interesting because
Mm-hmm.
they're under Jim Montgomery. They've never had a time during the regular season that is made like there's no point in time where you can look at it and go, well, if he was in the final year of a contract, that 10-game period or that 20-game stretch would have cost him his job. Like there really hasn't been a duration of time, save for maybe a 5 to 7 game window, where you sit there and go, maybe if he was a lame duck coach, you consider making a coaching change. And as Matrix says, Monty is a great person and a great coach. Hopefully, he can get over the playoff hump and get an extension. That's just it. It's the playoffs. So you're going to essentially not know what's going to happen to this coach until the end of the year, which means he's going to coach for wins all regular season, and then he's going
Mm-hmm.
to coach to win in the playoffs. Now, that's where, a veteran number 2 goaltender like Jonas Corposalo has an edge over a Brandon Bussey or a DiPietro. That's where, like you said, what's the leash going to look like Fabian Lysell defensively? Now, if he can prove over the course of a long haul, because let's face it, David Pasternak's not the greatest defenseman, defensive forward on the roster either. But when you're going to get 100 points out of him, you sit there and go, okay, as long as he's a net positive, we will take his slight deficiencies
Mm-hmm.
defensively. The question is Fabian Lysell going to fall into that category, or is he going to fall into a defensive liability who's unable to score and outscore his liabilities?
And he's going to coach like that all season long. It's why we might see a Jordan Osterley recalled before we see an Alex Regula or an Ian Mitchell or, uh, God forbid, a Mike Callahan.
Yeah.
Um, you
Now,
know,
if the team comes out and they come out like a complete and total turd, and they end up changing the coach, and you kind of sit there and go, well, let's try some of the kids because the season's already lost. Well, then that's when you would see maybe a Fabian Lysell with a longer leash. That's where you might see Georgi Merkulov play with a Matthew Poitras to see what they can do together as 2 young kids. But that's so far from happening right now because all we've ever seen is Montgomery have successful regular seasons. So that's going to take a little bit to kind of establish that, hey, the season's over after 35, 40 games. You're halfway in. And even at that point, you're not fully out of it either, unless you're, I don't know, 10-30.
yeah. So,
The extremes really have to kind of take into consideration there. So, but yeah, I mean, we've got physicals and off ice stuff tomorrow. On ice, I believe, will be broken up into 2 sessions on Thursday and Friday. Then the black and gold game Saturday. We've got preseason hockey on Sunday. We will be doing our show, I believe, Sunday evening after that game. I just got to double check the time of that game. Let's see. That game is at 5 p.m. on Sunday. Normally we go at 6:30. Maybe we'll do a nice little post game. What do you think, Dom? Wait
no.
till the game ends or stick with the 6:30?
Um, it's not our regular show. It's the prospect show. So we're not doing a game recap,
No, I just
right?
meant do the show post game.
No. And you said maybe do a little game recap.
Oh, did I? Sorry,
Yeah.
I meant it as let's do it
Now,
after the game. And
why don't we postpone it this week and just go the following Sunday?
okay, all right. We'll do that. That actually works out pretty well because I did mention on HF boards earlier that next week we'll start the official 5th season of What's Bruin. As many know, I've done it with Kevin before. It's been in multiple iterations, but next week on Tuesday we'll kick off the official 5th season after we have some preseason games in the books.
Yeah.
And then actually, we have a game on that Tuesday. It's the Washington game at 7.
We do?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I just pulled it back up. Monday, no scheduled practice or media availability. Wednesday, there is a 10:30 practice and a 12:15 practice. So Monday or Wednesday.
We'll do Monday.
We'll do Monday. That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Monday, we'll have a preseason game to talk about. Matrix, that's a great question. You know what? He's probably eating a burrito. He wants to know where Kevin is.
Oh, he's mad at me.
Well, what'd you do to Kevin now?
Well,
Did
because
you
on the
burn his
show
burrito?
when on the 2 shows ago when told me when we were talking rosters, and remember I said everybody's entitled to their opinion, and he told me to go change mine because Tyler Johnson was making the roster.
He's
And
upset by that.
I said, don't disrespect me. I didn't disrespect you, so don't tell me what to do. I valued your opinion. It's just don't come knocking mine.
Nah, knowing Kevin, he's probably just out doing a job or something.
No, he's missed the last few shows, so that's probably why.
We'll find out. I'll reach out to Kevin and see what's going on. But Matrix says that you torched him, so we'll see.
You know, opinions are. I mean, you and I disagree because controversy sells, and we do it to keep everybody engaged. But
there are times though where we do actually disagree.
You know, but oh well, it is what it is.
It, like you said, it's a mutual respect, and
Yeah.
I'm nothing against Kevin, but we'll see what's going on. My guess is knowing Kevin, he's a very loyal watcher, and I know he always enjoys talking about the Bruins, but I've been trying to poke at him to get him on the show at some point. So we'll see. Brandon has a great question.
That's a good question.
Any concern with Marchand coming off of multiple surgeries this summer? Now, we touched on it a couple weeks ago on the show, right after they signed Tyler Johnson to the PTO. Do you want to recap that, or do we want to kind of see where we're at a couple weeks later?
Well, for first off, I want to say when you're talking that age as a professional hockey player, you have to have concerns. You have to have genuine concerns, especially when he had double hip surgery 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So you're now talking 5 surgeries over the last 2 years. And some of them serious. So there has to be a certain level of concern. I'm just not sure how high I place it because it is Brad Marchand.
Yeah. I'd be more worried if there was something coming out saying that the hips weren't right after the surgery.
Yeah.
The fact that it was, what were they again? Was it a hernia?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was a hernia, the elbow, and what was the third one?
Another groin.
Oh, a groin.
Yeah.
Like, again, I don't want to throw the term routine surgery around because nothing about surgery is routine for the body. But after the double hip surgery, these are not, I wouldn't mark them as major surgeries. So
no,
yeah,
but you still have to have a concern because it is 5 surgeries in 2 years. So
yeah, Jeff, that's what we were just going over, the surgeries. Groin was one of them. Okay, yep. All right, at least we answered Jeff's question there. And Matrix, yes, Kevin is a good dude. He is a good dude, absolutely. We miss him in the comment section. So, like I said, knowing him, he's probably out eating a burrito and enjoying his Sunday, or in this case, Tuesday evening, while waiting for the Bruins to start up again. So hopefully we'll see him in the comments again in a couple of shows. And maybe one day I can talk him out of retirement for an episode and have him jump on.
It would be nice. It would be nice.
Maybe we'll have to peer pressure him with a Twitter poll and just peer pressure him in with 100% answers with, a few hundred yeses. So Mike actually, this is a great question from Mike. Does this year's acquisitions mean less PK time for Marchand?
You want Trent Frederick to take a greater role in it. You want Max Jones to take a role in it. You hope that Kostelic can take some time. Johnny Beecher can. You Charlie Coyle can. You've lost Jake DeBrusk. So I think Marchand still gets PK time. I'm hoping not as much as he's been getting over the years.
I think you could probably also throw Morgan Geekie in on the PK a little bit. Like not the first unit, probably not even like a second unit, but more as like a third unit kind of who's in the box kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of forwards who can kill penalties. Like you said, Beecher, Coyle, Freddie. I'd throw Geekie in there, Jones, Kostelic.
You want guys who can take face-offs and win face-offs too. So I'm thinking that's Coyle, Beecher, and Kostelic, and fill in from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then defensively, you'll have McAvoy, you'll have Carlo, Lindholm, Zadorov, and Peak.
I'm hoping McAvoy gets no PK time.
I was gonna say you really don't want to see McAvoy on the PK, but he can do it. Mm-hmm. So that again is going to come down to like if Brandon Carlo is the one in the box. Well, you can't go to Carlo. You're going to want to use McAvoy for some of that. That's where you're going to probably prioritize Andrew Peak to kill some of the penalty, and then throw McAvoy in as kind of when the last 45 seconds to 15 seconds to kill that off as in there. Obviously it's all going to be in motion because it's fucking hockey and that's how it works. So let's see. Matrix says, just tell Kevin there's free food available. That might be the way to get it. We'll send him some cookies.
No, not my cookies.
Brandon wants to know, does Trent Frederick hit 20 goals this year?
I think so. I think he and Geekie both do.
I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. I'd have to check and see what his over-under is, but if his over-under is in that 17-18 range, I personally would take the over, but not on a big bet. You know me, I don't bet the mortgage. And I don't advise anybody else can.
Maybe you should. You'd be retired by now.
I rent.
Well, you'd own if you bet your rent.
Probably, or I would have nowhere to go. But again, I think he'll see enough time in enough scoring positions, or maybe he'll just be to the left of Poitras and have someone who can find him well enough to plot 20 this year. I mean, that's not unreasonable for him. Not at all. So let's see. We are quickly approaching 8:00 here, Dom. We're only about 5 minutes away.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's been another successful show. Always love it when we have so many viewers with their questions and whatnot to keep the show going. But we will start to wrap it up here as we try to get down to the 8:00 hour. Let's see what's going on. Asks, could Merck actually move on from Boston? Should he be sent to Providence? AHL makes it restrictive. So yeah, being under contract, as we talked about, he would report to Providence for this season. I believe this is the last year of his contract, though. Am I correct on that?
You are correct.
So barring him having a great camp and still somehow not cracking the roster because someone else like Poitras has a better camp, and another team coming and knocking on the door saying, we will give you X or, future considerations to take him. If he goes to Providence, he's probably done.
I would think so. I would think so.
And to your point, he'll probably end up over in Russia next season. Again, barring another team stepping in and saying we want to give him an NHL shot. If any other team steps in and says we want to give him an NHL shot, then yeah, you could move him for something. Even future considerations. Shit, I would, if he's not part of my future plans, I'm okay with a 7th round draft pick for him.
I look at it like this. It would be 3 seasons in the American Hockey League, earning, I believe, $85,000 a season. He's already given up money where he could have gone to the KHL and earned $1 million plus per season.
Yeah.
So why would he want to sign another contract where a year from now it'll be even tougher to crack the lineup and get stuck in the American Hockey League? Maybe get a 2-way contract that pays him $225,000 in the American Hockey League when he could go play for $1 million or $1.5 million in the KHL. Why would he?
And let's not forget, just because he goes over to the KHL, this is the same type of thing that when we talk about sending a player back to Providence, it's not the end of the world. Scouts still watch the KHL. So if he goes and he plays in the KHL and he plays well enough, there's a team that might look at him. I know Philadelphia scouts the Russians quite heavily. So they may look at him down the road and say, hey, let's offer him an NHL contract. He looks like we could use a player like that. His NHL dreams aren't dead just because they're not with the Bruins anymore. So let's see. Brandon also asks, has there been any discussion about Boston doing another European game in the future?
I haven't heard, but it's likely going to happen.
Yeah, they like doing the international games, the special
the
events
NHL and the
like
NHLPA are both in favor of it. When it becomes the Bruins' turn again remains to be seen.
Now, what's going on X does have a good follow-up. Would Markulov be able to leave the Bruins organization this year and go to the KHL?
He could, if things fell in the right order. One, the KHL and the NHL have an agreement not to poach each other's players under contract. So Merkulov is under contract, so it's not like Spartak or anybody else could come up to him and say, hey, sign a contract, we'll let you play. They just don't do that. What Merkulov and his agent would have to seek is the Bruins, the two of them getting the Bruins to agree to terminate his contract. So a mutual agreement to terminate the contract, and then he could go. We saw the Bruins do it with defenseman that went back to, I believe it was Sweden.
I don't remember the defenseman, but I was going to say, was it Koklachev or was it
No.
Forsbacka Karlsson that did something similar?
I think Karlsson was a free agent.
That's what I was trying to remember.
But there's a defenseman, they agreed to terminate their contract, so it go. And there was a forward too, just a couple of years ago. But anyway, that's what would have to happen. They'd have to agree to terminate their the contract, and then he could sign a KHL contract.
Now, obviously, with the Flyers and with Mitchkov and that scenario, there was talks of having to buy out the remainder of the contract. Is that something that would be part of that, where if the agent goes to the Bruins and says, we want you to let him out of this contract so he can go play in Russia, is that something that they would have to, or is that only a Russia to the U.S. situation?
It works both ways. They don't touch each other's players that are under contract. They don't.
All I know is Mitchkov had to be bought out of his contract over in Russia.
But they agreed. They agreed to let him go.
That right. So that could be. You could see it happen in the other direction if everybody came together.
Yeah.
But I feel like it would just result in play out this year in Providence and then go back over when the contract's over.
I think that's what the likely scenario would be. But like I said, why would he play in the AHL for 75,000, 85,000 bucks? He could earn over $1 million in the KHL. Just it doesn't make sense for him.
No, I would do the same as well. So with that, we are just past the 8 o'clock hour here. I want to thank everybody who's been watching us this week. We will be back again on Monday, same time, 6:30 Eastern, for another episode of What's Bruin. We might even do a little bit of prospect stuff in there as well. Was it
Victor Berglund? Yes, that's who it was.
Always can count on the viewers to answer some of our questions too. So we've got a great audience. We've got a great group that follow us, and hopefully it continues to expand. This episode will be put out as a pod tomorrow. So anybody who just jumped on towards the end, look at What's Bruin on any of your podcast platforms. It'll also be on YouTube. And Dom, do you have any final thoughts as we hit this 8 o'clock hour here in the East?
Finally, we're going to be able to say "Go Bruins" real soon, and have some hockey attached to it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm looking forward to. They report tomorrow, and I'm excited. I don't think I've ever been this excited to know someone else is getting a physical.
Well, I've got a nasty one coming up. I see the surgeon tomorrow, so
oh boy.
Yeah, it's one of those with the tube in each end, and anyway, we won't go there right now. But I do want to say, real quick, if I can give somebody a plug here.
Sure.
Flow Hockey, who are taking on the AHL TV this year. So you'll get to see every game the Providence Bruins play in the regular season and the playoffs. You'll get to see every USHL game, the majority of the NCAA games, ECHL games. So we're talking a lot of Bruins prospects, both at the pro and the not pro level. And
I think they're going to have some NCAA games on there too.
Isn't that what I just said? Didn't I say NCAA?
Did you? It's been a long couple days for me, so you might have.
So the price in the States, what is it, Chris? $150 for the year?
If you do it annually. $24.99 if you do it monthly. Now, I will
and in Canada, I don't have the monthly rate, and they just put the yearly rate up, which pissed me off because I should have got it the other day. Is now $220 Canadian for the year, but still worth it.
Absolutely. Now, I will say this too: if you go and sign up, because Dom and I have just mentioned it, let one of us know. I want to try to talk to them going into next season to see if there's an option for a discount for our viewers next year. So because I think they're going to do a great job. They've done other leagues in the past, and now that the American Hockey League is jumping on, I think it's only a great opportunity for them. If you never heard of it until now, just let us know if you do end up signing up, because that gives me something to bring to them. So, Dom, I appreciate you mentioning it.
Yeah, I think at least for the Providence Bruins, the AHL TV was poor quality. But Flow Hockey has some excellent quality, and it sounds like everything's cheap. Well, they provided the technology to the AHL before, but it now looks like it's all going to be Flow Hockey and their technology, and they're running it, so it should be a better product that we're going to see.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully getting out to a number of games myself. And with that, the last thing I've got is go be